So today we're taking a look at another thread under BJJ on Reddit, right? So today the user asks, bruised, sore, and over 30, need advice. He goes on to say, hey everyone, looking for some advice. I started BJJ and boxing in 2007 at 16. Got my blue belt in 2010 and also wrestled in high school. Took a long break from consistency, all due to some moving around and work requirements, but managed to train about 5 to 10 times a year and did some open mats around 2016. So it doesn't sound like he's getting it in consistently, maybe once a month, if that. But he's just really just touching base occasionally, so he has a baseline skill set maintenance. Then he goes on to say, I'm now 31, stayed in shape, and have now decided to return. I've signed up for an MMA-focused gym, which is a gym well known for making UFC fighters and includes a UFC champion as well. Needless to say, the gym is geared towards competition and fighting, which is no problem, as I don't have much issue with other blue belts and I've tapped a few purple belts. I can hang with the competition skill level, but my body is starting to disagree. After 10 classes total in the last 3.5 weeks, I'm sore and bruised to say the least. And now I've only managed to be training 2 to 3 times a week, if that. In my head, I was originally training 5 times a week on top of lifting weights, and I'm too sore to do blank other than go to class. And then the last thing he says is, really, I've got no interest in competing or fighting, just bettering my jiu-jitsu. I thought this was the best place to get that, but I'm not sure if it's worth feeling this way physically. So what you have to understand is, and it's a good question, but you've got 2 different perspectives, 2 different views here. So, and that's what happens when you have that little break in between. So when you started out, you were young, and when you're that young, I think you said you're 16 years old, you can do pretty much anything and bounce back the next day. So injuries weren't really an issue, fatigue wasn't really an issue, recovered really quickly, didn't really need much sleep, but those things are gone, right? If you ever think from the perspective of you are almost twice your age, if not more than twice your age, what you were when you originally started training and you were doing wrestling and doing jiu-jitsu. So you have to think about kind of from a common sense approach. Of course, right? And especially as guys, right? Especially guys that were athletic, you want to get back in there, you want to go harder and faster, right? You want to get back to that same level and push past that level. But the reality is your body has limitations. So it starts with common sense above anything else. My recommendation to you, and this is kind of how I've seen it over the years, I've worked with hundreds of athletes. You got to understand, you're training, I think you said about 10 or so times in 3.5 weeks. It doesn't sound like a lot, but I imagine when you're not going like low key, playing from your back, right? Like in kind of a flow game. You're getting after it, man. You're a wrestler, right? You used to be athletic and strong. You say you still are, so you're probably getting after it, right? You're grinding. What you realize with your body later on is that you can't do it at that same pace for as long. So you got to learn when to take time off. So that's largely going to depend on what your schedule's like. You said you've got work. I don't know if you've got a family as well. That definitely weighs into it. That's just a consideration you have to take. So you may not be able to train as much as these 16 or 17-year-olds are doing right now. And that's great for them if they can. I know I can't train as often as I would like to, but you have to think about making the time that you have quality, right? So if you're coming in, if you can take 2 classes back to back, right? If you have 1 class, 1 beginner, and then 1 advanced as a blue belt, ask your instructor if you qualify for that class. I think that's a great option. And then maybe taking 1 or 2 days off accordingly, and then going back, and then maybe coming back on Saturday, hitting an open mat, but choosing, being very specific about who you have as a partner, right? Maybe have 1 or 2 challenging roles, but the rest, you can kind of work with, flow with, and you have kind of a jiu-jitsu rapport. You know that they're going to work with you a little bit and push you, but they're not going to hurt you. I think that goes a long way to it. So my suggestion is learn to dial back the training and understand that you are more than twice the age of what you used to be when you originally started. Then the last part of the puzzle is make sure you're getting decent recovery time in, right? So not only do you have days off, make sure you're getting decent sleep on those days, right? So if you're, burning the count on both ends, you're working, you've got your family, you're training jiu-jitsu, but you're only getting like 5 hours of sleep a night, your body's going to feel it, right? If you're not hydrated, your body's going to feel it. If you're not putting these nutrients back in your body, if you're not eating greens, well, you have nothing to repair and replenish from. So it's one of those things where you have to make that a consistency, get a decent diet down, right? In accompanied with decent rest, right? Making sure you're hydrated, making sure that you're taking that time for your body to recover, and then you add on to it. So my suggestion is it might be a time to take a little bit of time off of weightlifting, right? Especially if you're really wanting to get into jiu-jitsu, really focus on that aspect a little bit. Not long, maybe a couple months, right? 2 to 3 months, but that allows you to take the time that you're doing weightlifting, right? You can either use that for recovery or hit up an extra jiu-jitsu class of the week and then come back in, right, after a couple months where you delve back in more in depth into jiu-jitsu, right? And then you're going back to your strength training just once or twice a week, right? Until you find that perfect balance of jiu-jitsu and strength training and the rest of your life where you can maintain without tearing your body to shreds between each session. But that's my thoughts. If you have any feedback, make sure you leave it below in the comment section. I'd love to hear what you think. Till next time.